Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and now let's talk Little Witch Academia, episode 12. So, thankfully this episode continued up with the lore bits, and it ultimately culminated in Akko getting the third word for her staff. So I'm pretty excited in that regard, but overall it was a pretty strong episode for character development. It was, well, not character development. Actually, yeah, character development for Akko, but it was also a very strong episode for Akko to realize the capacity of other students, in particular Diana. So overall, I'm pretty happy. You get Akko character development, you get more exposition on Diana, which if you've watched the previous videos, you know I have a positive opinion on Diana in general, and you get to find out more about the lore, and you get to see some shenanigans coming from a certain very old witch. So overall, a pretty good episode. I was pretty happy with it. Now, before we actually get into the actual content of the episode, let's talk about the technicality of the episode. How well was this episode structured? Well, when you look at the episode, you go through and the pacing does maintain pretty well. The scenes flow one into the other. If anything, the first half before the body switching magic happens, or sorry, not body switching, the body transformation magic happens. Before that segment, the episode is kind of a bit more disjointed because that first half of the episode is marked by various scene changes. So the first half is just kind of trying to set up what's going on. We have the exposition of the words and what Ursula has to do, which involves a flashback. After that, we just have Akko and her group just kind of dealing with what they're going to do in the festival. And I have a lot to say about the festival bit. And then once we get into Akko finding the mirror, that's where the episode really takes shape, and that's where we really find out what's going to be the point of this episode. So if I was to really get critical on the episode, you know, the first half, you can argue, yeah, it's a bit put together. It's, you know, like one part in particular, I just think the very beginning, the first scenes just did it a disservice, and that might be the only negative because it was an unnecessary flashback. It was an unnecessary recap at that point, but it's just the way the transitions work. I wasn't really feeling it, but overall, it's a very good episode, especially for the ones who are really interested in the lore for Little Witch Academia, and especially since this is what's going to be carrying the series through most likely. So now let's transition into talking about what I found to be the most valuable bits of this episode. So we're going to start off with Diana first, because Diana is that character that a lot of people might be annoyed with. But ultimately, you know, this is something I'm always going to say. When you look at the way that character presents herself, the problem isn't so much Diana, it's the people around her, the people that blow her up. Because at the end of the day, you look at Diana and you look at what she's saying, and when people say, hey, you're going to be the best witch here, Diana's like, no, we don't know that. There might be someone better. You know, even if that is feigning humility, and I don't think it is, but you know, you might be the type of person who sees that and you think that that person is just being humble for the sake of appearances instead of being humble for the sake of humility in general, you know, fair. But ultimately, Diana does put on the air of humility. And I think when she does blow up at Akko, it's just because you have conflict between someone who is legitimately trying very hard versus someone who just, by her perception, seems to just be joking around and just messing around. And you know, whether or not that's fair, that ultimately comes down to what the characters are in respect to each other. So the value here of this episode, I really think when it comes to the Akko and the Diana, just their general dynamic, is that ultimately Akko realizes that Diana does have a right to contend for the title of the Moonlit Witch. Like, she does have a right to be admired to the degree that she is. And when we saw Akko as Diana, like, don't let it be lost on you, everyone comes to Diana for help because she's clearly capable of it, whereas we saw exactly what happens when people come to Akko. She just can't keep up in that regard. And will she ever be able to keep up with Diana? Most likely not in the refinement of witch arts. Like, Akko has her own thing, and that's the power that's being bestowed to her through the shiny rod, no doubt because of the merits of who she is as a person. But at the end of the day, Diana has a lot of merit and a lot of stake in when it comes to being a big figure in the magic world, apparently, right? What I'm ultimately trying to express here is that Diana has a right to be celebrated as much as she is, although some people, when they get jeery about it and they start jeering the other students, it's a bit unfortunate. but she has a right to be celebrated the way she is. She has a right to be kind of critical on Akko, but at the same time, Akko has her valuable aspects, and that is just the general heart that she has. And ultimately, you know, had you given the shiny rod to Diana, maybe Diana wouldn't have been able to pull off the things that Akko is going to be able to pull off, because they have such different perspectives. Ultimately, the perspective is what might, you know, just influence who got that shiny rod and who is going to do better with the shiny rod and whatever else they have to do. But ultimately, you know, you have these two people, one that we can see is really impressive and one that we know is going to be very impressive. And the best solution here isn't so much that they fight, it's just that they come together and that they help each other out. Because even when you look at the episode, that's how it's running, right? Because we have Diana giving us exposition and we have Akko like actualizing that exposition. Diana sets it up, tells the viewer, and Akko comes through with it. So ultimately, these two help the storyline very well. It's just a matter of how long it'll take before the two can come together and help each other out. Now, one more thing on Diana, I do wonder if she does get stressed out about the things she has to do, because now she's pretty much taking responsibility for trying to make things better for the magical community, on top of being just hounded by everyone that needs her help. Like, I think it's pretty unfortunate that Diana has to help everyone with every little thing. Unfortunate. Just, it sucks for her. But after seeing her library, seeing her study, seeing all her books and all that, like, the girl does legitimately put in work, and ultimately she's trying to help people. So, you know, it just kind of counterbalances on the poor girl. And one more thing, Lot said something, and I just think it's very interesting, you know. Lot said something about Diana just having natural talent. And at that point, you know, I don't think it's so much talent. Would you call that talent? I think she had opportunity. I think the only thing that is afforded to her through being a noble is the fact that she has the leisure and the opportunity to collect as many materials as she has, and has the opportunity to devote that much time to study. Would you call that talent? What is talent to you guys? What do you think talent is, and how does that relate? I don't think it's just talent there. Not when the girl has to put in that much work to actually maintain herself. Anyway, enough about Diana. Let's talk about Akko. So we know that the mirror isn't just a trickster mirror. It's the prof from the last episode. She is there. She decided to give Akko a little trial. Like, that's what it ultimately ended up being, right? She came and she gave Akko a trial. So she does the tricks to Akko. She makes... Oh, and in case you guys like aren't thinking it was actually that teacher, like, look, this is the image. She's right there in the reflection of the mirror. So she gave the trial to Akko. Once I saw that, it's like, okay, this is going to be worthwhile. Akko's going to have to learn something. And I think she ultimately does learn something. She learned something about the other person who she admires, or not admires, but the other person that she's in contention with. So she learned about Diana, and then she gets to just spend a day in her shoes, walk in her shoes for a bit, get an appreciation for that, and then ultimately she comes to her realizations about what Chariot was and what Chariot did when it came to practicing, right? It ultimately culminates in Akko getting that magic word, so I really appreciate that. It was a success. The trial was a success when it came to the professor who gave the trial to Akko, and I can't remember her name. Now, in the episode, there was a point where Akko was really doubting herself. And, you know, I understand it had to happen. Akko had just gone through quite a day and she saw what Diana's capable of herself. But I think her getting down, you know, like, she can do her own thing. So I was very happy when she realized that there are things that only she can do, because ultimately that's what's going to separate her from Diana and gain her the respect of Diana. Of course, it would be nice if Akko also, like, just refined herself more so that this doesn't become a consistent problem. Hopefully this character development will stay solid for the rest of the episodes, but we'll really have to see. Regardless, I'm really happy that Akko got her victory as well in this episode. So, you know, Akko overall, hers continues to be a character developing story, and her seeing that Chariot wasn't really trying to be the best witch, but was just having fun with it and she was aiming for a higher message. I think that's really good for Akko, because Akko's chasing after Chariot has become really pronounced in the last 2 episodes. And you can tell it's been really pronounced because in this episode, we get the declaration of the Moonlit Witch. We didn't know about that in the previous episodes. Like, this episode is where it really comes into center stage. So it's a goal that's suddenly just thrown in there. So that's most likely happening because now we've hit the main plot line of Little Witch Academia. So now they have to start establishing those kind of goals for the character. But it still ends up being just like a sudden thing that just popped up into the episode, or it just popped up into the series. We may have had a few mentions of it like once or twice in passing, but I don't think they were as important as it is right now. So finally, let's just talk about one more thing. It's still regarding the girls and the school. You know, I have my feelings about the faculty. I totally have various feelings about them. So anytime they do, at this point, I'm really just looking for things to not like them for. Ever since the one episode I really vocalized my opinions on them, you know, things have gotten better. Ursula has stepped up. She's learning. Ursula is learning, and she is getting to be more respectable. My grievances aren't really with her anymore. And really, my grievance with this isn't really just the staff. It's just, okay, when we're having the selection process for the who's getting what duties, there is no way that is random in universe, okay? Like, we know from a narrative perspective, it is not random. But in universe, you cannot justify that as random, right? One time is a coincidence. Diana getting the best job. That, okay, you know, I can say, okay, coincidence. The secondary delinquent trio, the one with Constance and all them, them getting cleaning duty, okay. You know, give like another one of the groups of the misfits a clearly bad duty. Okay, sure. 2 times. Then you have Akko going up and she gets one of the worst duties, which is literally becoming duty. It's like, okay, once is a chance, twice coincidence, but that 3rd time is a pattern. That is like, no way, man. Everyone got what people like designate them as getting. So I doubt it. I doubt that's the thing. And then like the teachers saying you'll be a sacrifice. Now I'll forgive that. That might just be tradition. They feel like someone has to do it. But like singling out 3 kids to have to go and do that, and it's so demeaning. Wouldn't it be like a better showing if they just had Diana do it? Like, yeah, let Diana do it. She has the grace to show like, it's okay, I can do this. I mean, look, man, I think that's just really mean, and it ultimately comes out being really mean. Why can't the teachers go ahead and do that? Why do they have to make the students go through it? But then they say like, no, it's tradition, and I get it, tradition, but tradition only works if everyone has to follow it, and at this point only 3 kids have to follow it. That's a faulty tradition. That's not fair. But then you can say it equalizes, since all they have to do is get eaten, whereas everyone has to put legitimate work. Yeah, you know, that's why I can't really get mad at this one. It's really hard to argue that one. Anyway, them being sacrifices is ultimately one of the things that spurs Akko into action. And she is upset, as she should be. I would be pretty upset too. But I'm not gonna lie, when I was getting the description for that ghost and finding out that it is a guy that had all his friends die out, and then he just became really sad and he became that giant ghost, I kind of just hope that Akko goes ahead and she makes the whole situation better. I want to see Akko pull off her Akko thing. Like, now we're coming into that part of the series where legitimately Akko can make a big change in what's been going on. So I would love to see that. And that's why I'm ultimately okay with her getting that sacrifice duty, because give Akko someone who like views her not as a witch in training, but just as a person, and Akko does way better. Put her in a situation where a witch isn't directly judging Akko, and Akko will excel because by the virtue of, hey, she did a really good thing despite your stupid traditions. And guys, I thought that the image of that ghost seemed awfully familiar, so I went in and I looked at something real quick, and this is the image from the previous episode. It's that ghost. So that's really interesting. So it looks like this is something that's... So now we have the context to legitimately say that those images from before might be the future that's awaiting Akko. So knowing that the ghost is a big part in that's going to be pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited for that. But now that you look back at one of the images of the Molotov cocktails, and now it's like, this might turn real ugly, but we'll have to see what ultimately happens. Now, the episode did give us one last bit of exposition, and that was the witches that are going to be popping up in this festival. There is one witch in particular that I think is going to be very important. it's this one right here. The reason I'm saying she's going to be important is because I think she's in the opening, and because she gets an unusual amount of identification in that scene. Usually when you have those little background details, pay a lot of attention to it, because that might be someone important. And another thing is that there's a shooting star somewhere in Germany. Very interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Trigger brings those concepts into other episodes, and we'll see what happens. But anyway, guys, video's going on pretty long. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. Overall, a really powerful episode. I'm really excited for what's going to happen in the future, especially considering that we have that ghost popping up in the really ominous kind of tone. So I'm really excited. I hope next week is going to be great. So guys, thanks for watching, and till next time, I hope you have a very great day.